I'm literally my own safety net right now because I don't have a good relationship with my mom. My dad is no longer around. When it comes to like financial crisis, right, it's like I feel very helpless and disempowered right now because I don't know who I can turn to. Hello. Hello.
How would you describe your mental health right now?
I am diagnosed with clinical depression and social anxiety, but I think ever since I was diagnosed in June last year, like it's been a lot better than it was last time. So it's like I'm medicated now, and like I'm very aware of my thoughts. My mental health on a scale of 1 to 10 right now, like on an average, it's like a 6 to a 7.
I think I'm in a great place in terms of my mental health right now. But of course, like there are situations in my life right now that I still have that are left unanswered and unrationalized. TLDR of it is I'm literally my own safety net right now because I don't have a good relationship with my mom. My dad is no longer around. When it comes to like financial crisis, right, it's like I feel very helpless and disempowered right now because I don't know who I can turn to. It's shaking my foundation.
Like right now on my internship, I have to go back to school for like things like open house and stuff, and I have to meet my batchmate. So that is one like rather big thing that I'm still struggling with on a day-to-day basis.
Have you ever been to therapy?
I've never been to therapy before, personally, but I've been to a psychiatrist to get a diagnosis, and I would say that when I was in the psychiatrist's office, it was pretty similar to what I think therapy would be.
I haven't gone to therapy yet because I feel that I am able to process a lot of like my thoughts myself. Like now that like I have all these like issues, I'm just on the fence of like I can't decide what am I supposed to think or feel. So I think a therapy will be able to help me like structure my thinking and maybe validate or advise my thought process lah.
Today we'll be sending you to try animal-assisted therapy for the first time.
Yeah, okay, I'm quite open to the idea of therapy. I thought about getting it since like when I was diagnosed, even before that. I thought it would just be nice to have somebody like to listen to me.
Okay, wait, are there going to be dogs?
Yep.
Yes! Okay, so honestly, like I've seen like videos and stuff where people go through like animal-assisted therapy, but I can't really like imagine what is it like. I'm excited to see how this will play out.
Hi, I'm Jewel. I'm an occupational therapist and also co-founder of Little Marvels Therapy. For animal-assisted therapy over here, we do it in conjunction to therapies. The dogs are in the session and they provide an affectionate, non-judgmental presence. And this helps clients feel a lot calmer and open to sharing whatever they are struggling with. For the two dogs, it will be Kobe and Ralph. So Kobe is an older dog, 2-3 years old, and then Ralph is about 1, and both of them have different personalities. So Kobe is a lot more spunky, independent, and Ralph, he is a lot more affectionate. So depending on how the clients present, we will identify the appropriateness of the dogs. So it's really important to get a right fit for each client. And I've met the two talents over Zoom. We've kind of gone through a first session where we discuss our main concerns, and also they've kind of done a bit of a questionnaire so I understand a little bit of where they are at. And then usually the second session, which is today, is where we are going to kind of continue our therapy. I'm really excited to meet them and to introduce them to our dogs.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Actually, how are you feeling today?
Me, I think today I woke up pretty okay. It's just that I had 2 hours of sleep.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
prior to this, yeah. I was
see.
a bit nervous. A bit
nervous because of...
I think it's just the idea of having to like share sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
sometimes Ralph does get a bit nervous, but he's really motivated by treats.
I can tell, me too.
Okay, Ralph, sit. And because he's kind of like a...
Baby.
Okay, so he knows a few. Okay, Ralph, down. 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 Okay, why don't you give that a go?
No, Anya. No, do not dig it out of my hand. Down. I love you too. It's mutual, boy. You gotta go down, bro.
He's a little bit impatient, isn't he?
I know. No.
Ralph, down.
Down. Oh, okay. I give you the treat. Slowly because he put his head on my leg.
Oh, he's so sweet, isn't he?
I saw a lot of like my inner child in like Ralph, which is kind of weird. It's like I'm equating myself to a dog, but it kind of feels like that. I think in a sense it's therapeutic. Because when you look at a dog, right, will you punish a dog for doing something stupid? You won't, because it's a dog. You know, then you should treat yourself the same way. Lovey.
So what would you like to talk about today?
I can talk about a lot of things. I got a bundle of trauma. It's like the advent calendar. You just pick one number and it comes out.
Yeah, or maybe something that's like bugging you the most today.
I think recently it would be my anxiety regarding like social situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a open house event next week. Then like the idea of having to go back to school and like meeting people that I know, like it honestly, like I want to do it, but the thought of it is like it's very anxiety inducing to me. And I don't exactly know why specifically like that causes me anxiety, but the idea of it alone, like sometimes it keeps me up at night.
How do you feel about having all these things?
Like after I got my diagnosis, I think the first thing wasn't like to get through that. It was like I shockingly, like I think for my generation, like they're very open about mental health. Like, oh, you got depression, you got anxiety, it's normal. Like people on the internet heavy, you know.
Yeah.
But then for me, it was like when I got my diagnosis, I didn't expect there to be like internalized stigma. Like there was like some kind of shame with like the diagnosis in and of itself. Like, oh, I got depression. Then who can I tell that will not judge me? Even though like most of my friends, I know for a fact like they will not judge me.
Do you think Ralph is judging you?
No, shockingly, I don't think animals do.
Have you heard of this thing called cognitive behavior therapy?
Yes, I watched a podcast on it.
Cognitive behavior therapy is where we try to identify our automatic negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And how, let's say if you think like people hate me.
Yeah.
Obviously that's going to make you feel
Negative.
very negative, very horrible, right? And then in terms of the behavior, you're not going to want to be around those people who you think hate you.
Yeah.
So cognitive behavior therapy is really helpful to try to identify some of those automatic negative thoughts and to challenge that idea.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say if Ralph told you like, okay, I think that everyone in this room hates me.
Take it back.
Right, and then obviously if people around him hate him, he's gonna like want to move around, he's gonna be really scared, right?
Yeah.
What are some things you will say to him? That's why you're not giving me the whole bottle of kibbles.
Oh, I would say no. I feel like my instinct is to say no. Then I would say that like people don't hate you.
And then he's like, no, but they really hate me because nobody else is giving me kibbles.
Because nobody else has kibbles. Like I would rationalize it to him, even though he's a
good.
dog. I don't think he understands, but like I'll rationalize it. But then like
because you've been kind of challenging that thought. That's good. And that happened. Actually, that's called neuroplasticity. Awesome.
I got a strong brain.
Yeah. You are strong.
Damn, bro. I think my expectation of therapy was really like, I thought it would be like really just conventional talking lah. But I think it was a lot more like deeper than that. They taught you a lot of like solutions. So I thought it was like take home homework. Jody teach me like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which was I think something that's very useful if you are interested and you can't afford therapy. Cause like me, I'm a broke student. So being able to do therapy for myself, it would be like, it's a very interesting thing to me.
And I don't know if you noticed, but Ralph is so much more calm now.
Yeah.
Like at the start, he was like kind of anxious, like moving around, but now he's just really nice and chill.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ralph.
이제 사랑해.
Oh.
강아지.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good
Hello.
morning. Do you love animals too?
Yes, I have 2 cats myself also.
Yeah, and he's really excited to meet you. Would you like to play some fetch with him?
Sure.
Okay, so you can toss the ball and then say wait first.
Okay.
Oh, you're pretty good. Okay, go get it.
Come
and
back.
then you say give me.
Give me.
Kobe, get it. Good boy. Good job.
It was a very comfortable environment because like, wow, we got all the playgrounds and everything. Yeah, and it's not like a very like sterile environment. So that's what I like about it. And the interaction was very organic.
And then you can say like, where's your cheeks?
Okay.
Like, where's your cheeks? Like that.
Where's your nose? Ooh.
Good job. Sit. Where's your cheeks?
Okay, listen to mommy.
Here, cheeks. Good job. Well, I hope you had a fun little warm up. And I think Kobe had really fun time getting to know you too, right, darling? Yes. Yeah, so I remember we talked a little bit about some of the things that stressed you out. Would you like to talk about it today?
Yeah, I guess like now one of like my stressor that like I totally feel very helpless is about like my financial situation. My dad is no longer around already, and he's always like been like a very strong support financially lah. So I mean like after he left, I always feel like I'm my own safety net, and I'll be very careful about like my decisions, that kind of thing. But it just so happened that like I made like a very like bad like investment decision, and then I lost like majority of like his inheritance lah. So and at the same time like I still have to like pay for like some insurance thingy, which is quite a sum. I mean like in this case like it's just like I feel quite helpless because for me like I mean I could ask my younger brother, but for me like I didn't want to because like I don't want to like burden my younger brother. But at the same time like some of my friends ask like, would you ask your mom? I guess like mentally I disown her already. Yeah. So that's why like asking her is not exactly like an option that I will consider lah.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of like at a standstill because like, I don't know what to do about this situation. Yeah, and I'm very scared that like I will make like very survival mode each kind of decision. Every day I just like everyone see me like very chill that kind of thing, but inside I'm like yeah.
And of course, I mean, that's very concerning. Even Kobe is like really concerned about like how you're feeling.
Yeah, he's suddenly like sitting here and like listening. It's like, okay, what's up?
He's like, what happened? Yeah. What happened to the relationship between you and your mom?
Yeah, I think like this is one thing that I really want to like address. Just that like I always like, I can feel the emotional resistance coming up wherever like I have to think about like my issue with her lah. But basically, I think like growing up, she hasn't been like the best mother figure. So after my dad passed, I like tried to still be there for her. Like my brother always say like, what would dad do? Because like my dad is very patient.
Yeah.
But like for me, I'm like, I kind of had like my last straw once because like she shouted at me in the mall. The one thing that I cannot rationalize, like I mean like, all these like emotional things, I still can rationalize like why maybe she will behave like that, but it's a physical punishment that I can't, because like what kind of mind do you need to have to think of something so twisted to want to do it on a child who's like
helpless?
Yeah, like 8 years old. Like what wrong can I do at 8 to deserve that kind of like punishment? So it's just like I have two questions in mind. It's like is she unaware? So if she's unaware, that means that like she thinks this is okay.
And it
then,
shouldn't be okay.
Yeah, like so where does like your morals lie? And then the other one is like she just never reflect or like because
and she doesn't admit that she's wrong.
Yeah, because the thing is, after very long, I met her last weekend because we went to visit a relative.
Yeah.
Then when she came, right, she's like, oh, hi. Then she wanted to lean in for a hug. Then I just like, no, don't touch me. Because like, for me, like, I don't like people to touch me if I don't feel comfortable around them lah. Then after that, like, she said, if I did anything wrong, I'm sorry. So this statement is very telling to me that like,
it's like if.
Yeah, it's like, and someone like for me, like my apology language is accepting responsibility.
And she hasn't ever like shared anything like that with you?
Not that I know.
It's really tough. And you know, interestingly, in many ways, your story resonates a lot with mine.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm also the older sibling, and growing up, like, it was really hard to relate with my mom because she used to really struggle with controlling her own emotions. So sometimes I felt like I had to parent my mom too, and that affected the relationship. Yeah, so it's really tough.
She reassured me like whatever like thoughts that I have, the choices that I make for myself, right, is valid. And that was very assuring to hear because like that was what was like rocking my center for the longest time.
And so you were closer to your dad when he was...
So much closer. Like I think like, I mean it's been about like 6 years already. Like every day
Since
I
he
still...
passed away?
Sometimes he will punch the button a bit sometimes, yeah. And oh my god! Okay. Yeah, but like yeah, losing him was really like losing like the pillar in the family. And
The stability.
yeah, but I know now that like my brother is stepping up to it and which is why like I didn't want to like talk to him about like this financial situation because I don't want him to feel like he's like, or he has to take my father's place to support me and my mom yeah. Having like Kobe there, the dog there, like you know animal will never judge you. So it is very assuring and grounding in that moment So like but just so you know your therapists will never judge you They are just there to listen to you and help you So the shame is all in your head.
Well, thanks for sharing whatever you did too. I think it's so brave of you to have gone through whatever you have and come out here.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kobe. Come here. He's like, what? Is it my turn?
Yeah, and thanks Kobe for just being cute.
Just hanging around.
Yeah.
How was the session?
Honestly, for my first therapy, right, it's great because I always thought that like therapy is like you go into a room, you sit on the couch, and you just like, hi, this is my problem. Yeah, but I guess like it was to quote what I watched on Stats on Netflix, right? A lot of times like people with issues, right, we just want to be heard. We don't need our friends to give us solutions. Like just like hear me out and like try to empathize from my situation. That's all we need.
It took me a while to open up but I think that overall it was a really nice session to just like be able to talk. Like the show was really like, I sit there, then the dog sit on me, and then we like pet each other, and then I talk. Which is, I know it's very weird, but that's my impression of like animal as therapy. It's like the animal like just like come here to like give you comfort. But it's not like, it's like the animal has a life of its own, you know, like the dog is a dog. It's like its own entity, it's going to like do its own thing, and then you like live, laugh, love with it. And then you just have to accept that. Sometimes I think it's a good metaphor for life. You know, life runs its own course. You just have to accept it. But I think if everybody gets a chance, they should go for therapy once. Never know. I think it's just nice to have a sounding board. Comfort vibes.
Would you go for another session of this therapy?
I think it's a great start for people who are new to therapy.
Yeah, but I would honestly speaking, I would do a session like this again. Like I think it's very comforting and it's it takes you a shorter amount of time to open up, which means that you can get to the root of the issue a lot faster. Like as compared to like when I was in my psychiatrist's office, right? It took me like 30 minutes. And then I get so scared. Not like so scared, I just get like so insecure and then I thought about my issue and I start crying. You know, I'm just glad that I didn't start crying because I thought I would start crying, but I didn't start crying, so that's a pat on the back for me. But honestly, I would do it again. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to find out more about animal-assisted therapy, you can check it out in the description box below.
Let us know if you will try animal-assisted therapy in the comments below. If you like our videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.
Bye-bye!